Mary Collins had always lived on the edge of the small frontier settlement, not because she chose to, but because life had pushed her there little by little. The settlement was small, built of wooden cabins with smoke rising from their chimneys on cold mornings. People knew each other well, sometimes too well. Everyone carried stories, secrets, and judgments they passed around like trading goods. Even before her baby was born, Mary had never been fully accepted by the townsfolk. Her mother had been a traveler, and her father a farmer from another county. So many believed Mary didn't quite fit into their ideas of who belonged. She worked hard, kept to herself, and never caused trouble, but that didn't matter much. During the months before her labor, Mary noticed how people turned quiet when she walked by. They would give polite nods but avoid welcoming her fully into conversations. Her husband, Thomas, was the one person who gave her comfort. He had a laugh that filled a room and a gentle way of speaking that made her feel safe. When he passed away after a sudden illness, the settlement showed brief sympathy. They brought her broth and helped chop wood for a week or two. But sympathy fades quickly in a place where survival depends on constant work. Soon, the same people who had offered help went back to their routines, and Mary was once again alone. Her pregnancy was not easy. She often felt weak and tired, and there were evenings when she sat by the fire, holding her growing belly, whispering to the child inside so she wouldn't feel afraid. Without Thomas beside her, the nights felt much longer. Even so, Mary tried to stay hopeful. She believed the baby would bring her new joy, a new purpose, maybe even soften the hearts of those who kept their distance. She dreamed of holding her child, of humming little lullabies Thomas used to sing, and of making a quiet life for just the two of them. But life rarely moves in straight, gentle lines. The winter that year arrived early. Cold winds pushed through cracks in the walls, and the fields produced less food than usual. The settlement had begun to worry about rationing supplies, measuring grains, and drying what little meat they had for the long season. In such times, people grew more cautious, more protective of what they had. And when people become afraid, they sometimes look for someone to blame. For some reason, many eyes fell on Mary. When she went into labor, it happened suddenly. She felt the first pain early in the morning while boiling water. She leaned against the table, trying to breathe through it. The cabin around her felt too small, too quiet, too far from help. She wrapped a shawl around herself and walked to the nearest house, hoping for support. When she knocked, a woman peeked out but hesitated to help. Her husband stood behind her, whispering something Mary couldn't hear. The woman finally said she would bring someone, but no one came. Hours passed, and Mary realized she had to return home and do the best she could alone. The pains grew stronger. She knelt on the wooden floor, gripping the leg of her bed frame. Her breaths came fast and sharp. She whispered to herself that she could do this, that she had to do this. Finally, after what felt like endless hours, the baby arrived. A tiny, warm body, wrapped in a soft blanket Mary had stitched months before. The child let out a small cry, thin but steady. Mary began to cry too, but her tears were a mix of exhaustion, relief, and love. She held the little girl against her chest and whispered her name, Eliza. For a few minutes, Mary felt like the world had finally given her a blessing, but her hope did not last long. Word spread quickly that Mary had given birth. A few women visited, but instead of offering joy, they brought concerned, almost uneasy expressions. One of them, Mrs. Reed, spoke softly but looked uncomfortable. She said the settlement was facing shortages, that another child, especially a girl, would be difficult for the town to support. Mary listened quietly, her heart tightening. Another neighbor, Mr. Hale, stopped by later that day. He did not step inside but spoke from the doorway. His voice was steady, but his eyes avoided Mary's. He talked about the hard winter, the lack of food, the need for strength. He told her, in an indirect way, that some people believed a baby girl would bring more hardship. Some even whispered that Mary's misfortune, losing Thomas, struggling alone, was a sign that she carried bad luck. Mary could not believe what she was hearing. She looked down at her daughter, sleeping peacefully in her arms, and wondered how anyone could see her as a burden. She tried to speak up, to defend herself, but the words felt tangled in her throat. She only managed to say that she would take care of her baby, that she asked for nothing from the settlement. But the whispers grew stronger. The next morning, a group of 3 elders came to her cabin. Their visit was not cruel, but it was cold. They told her the settlement could not provide for her and her child any longer. They said it was best for her to move on, to find another place where she might have better luck, more support, and fewer suspicious glances. They suggested she pack what she needed and leave before the next snowfall. Mary felt the world pull out from under her. She wanted to argue, to scream, to beg them to have compassion. But she saw the firm looks on their faces. These were people who had already made up their minds. She realized that staying would only bring more trouble. The community that should have helped her now wanted her gone. With trembling hands, Mary gathered the few things she owned: a blanket, a small bag of dried berries, a change of clothes for herself, and the carefully sewn baby wrap for Eliza. She bundled her daughter close to her chest to keep her warm. Before leaving, she looked around the cabin one last time, the place that had held her happiest and saddest moments, and whispered a quiet goodbye. Stepping outside, she felt the cold air bite at her face. Snowflakes drifted gently, almost apologetically, as if the sky felt sorry for her. Mary walked slowly at first, unsure of where to go. The prairie stretched out before her, wide and quiet, with tall grass bending softly in the wind. She tightened her grip on her sleeping baby and took a deep breath. She told herself she would not give up, not now, not ever. The first day was the hardest. She walked until her legs felt heavy, stopping only to rest beneath a group of bare trees. She rocked Eliza gently, humming the lullaby Thomas used to sing. She thought about him often, wishing he were still there to comfort her, to walk beside her across the quiet land. She knew he would have been proud of their daughter. She imagined him holding the baby, speaking to her softly, calling her by name. The thought brought her both comfort and sadness. The following days were long and cold. Mary rationed her food carefully, eating little so her child could have more. She held Eliza close during the nights, wrapping them both in the same blanket. Some nights the sky was clear, filled with bright stars that seemed to stretch forever. Mary looked up at them and prayed for guidance, for strength, for a sign that she was not truly alone. Though she avoided danger and kept to open paths, she still felt the weight of fear. Not fear of people or animals, but fear of failing her daughter. She whispered promises to Eliza, telling her she would find a place where they would be accepted, where the little girl could grow without judgment. On the 4th night, Mary felt weaker than before. She had walked farther than she should have, and her strength was fading. She reached the edge of the Red River, its gentle sound calming but distant. She sat on the bank, holding Eliza tightly, and closed her eyes just for a moment. Her breath grew shallow, and the world around her softened into silence. Just as she felt herself slipping into sleep, she heard the faint sound of hooves in the distance. She opened her eyes, unsure if she was dreaming. Through the soft glow of the moon, figures appeared. Shadows at first, then shapes she could recognize as riders. Mary didn't move. She didn't have the strength. She simply held her baby close and waited, uncertain whether this meeting would be her end or her beginning. Mary did not know if what she saw was real or just the result of exhaustion. The soft moonlight painted everything in silver, making the figures approaching her seem almost dreamlike. She blinked a few times, trying to keep her eyes open, trying to stay aware. Eliza lay quietly in her arms, her tiny breaths rising and falling against Mary's chest. The sound of hooves grew clearer, gentle and steady, like a slow heartbeat echoing across the quiet land. As the riders drew closer, Mary felt her heart tighten. Over the past few days, her world had shrunk to only one thought: protect her daughter. Now, as silhouettes on horseback surrounded her, she tried to gather the last bits of her strength. She gently shifted the blanket to make sure Eliza was fully covered, though the movement made her arms tremble. Her body felt heavy, as if gravity itself had grown stronger. The horses stopped a few feet away. For a long moment, everything was still. The wind rustled the tall grasses, and the river whispered softly nearby. Mary waited, barely breathing. One of the riders slowly stepped down from his horse. He moved with calmness, not rushing, not startling her. Even in the dim light, Mary could see that he carried himself with quiet dignity. The man spoke in a gentle tone to the others, and though Mary could not understand his words, the sound of his voice was soothing. He approached her slowly, keeping his hands visible, as if showing he meant no harm. Mary watched him closely, her eyes filled with both fear and hope. The man knelt several steps away from her, giving her space. He studied her face, then looked down at the sleeping baby. His expression softened. Mary opened her mouth to speak, but the words came out weak and faint. "Please, my baby," she whispered, unsure what she was trying to say. She felt embarrassed by her own helplessness, but her body simply had no strength left. The man nodded gently, as if he understood, even without her finishing the sentence. He turned to the riders behind him and spoke again. One of them quickly dismounted and brought a water pouch. The man held it out to Mary with both hands. For a moment, she hesitated. Her instincts told her to be careful, but her lips were dry and her vision swayed like a lantern flame in the wind. She accepted the water. Even lifting the pouch made her arms ache. She brought it to her mouth and took small sips. The cold water refreshed her throat, and she felt a small spark of energy return. The baby stirred slightly, perhaps sensing the change. After a moment, the man pointed to himself and said, "Tsarho." Mary nodded slowly, understanding he was sharing his name. She tried to repeat it softly. "Tsarho." Her voice fragile. He gave a kind smile, then pointed gently to Mary, inviting her to share her name. Mary swallowed and whispered, Mary Collins." He nodded again, repeating softly, "Mary." The gentle way he said her name made her eyes fill with tears. For days, she had spoken little, heard little, and felt entirely alone. Now, someone spoke her name with care, not judgment. She looked down at Eliza and whispered, "My baby, Eliza." Tsarho leaned slightly forward, studying the little face peeking from the blanket. His eyes warmed, and he gave a small nod of approval, as if the child were a gift rather than a burden. Mary felt something inside her unwind, something tight, something that had been hurting for too long. Charo spoke again to his riders, and two women stepped forward from the group. Mary hadn't noticed them before. They had been behind the others, wrapped in warm shawls. The women approached slowly, offering comforting smiles. One of them gently touched her own chest, then extended her hands halfway, silently asking permission to help. Mary tightened her hold on Eliza for a moment, instinctively protective. The woman immediately paused and nodded respectfully, showing she understood. She didn't try again. Instead, she simply sat beside Mary, wrapping a warm shawl around her shoulders. The other woman gently placed a small bag of food near Mary's feet, not insisting she eat, just making it available. For the first time since she left the settlement, Mary felt truly seen. Not as a problem or an inconvenience, but as a person in need of kindness. She let out a shaky breath, realizing how close she had come to collapsing for good. Charho stood and extended his hand slightly forward, inviting Mary to stand. She tried to rise, but her legs wobbled. The woman beside her helped her up, steadying her gently. Mary felt embarrassed that she couldn't stand on her own, but the woman's touch was respectful, without pity or impatience. The riders formed a circle around them as Charho motioned toward their horses. Mary realized they were offering her safety, shelter, maybe even a chance to survive. She whispered a soft, "Thank you," though she wasn't sure if they could understand her. Gratitude didn't need language. Charho gestured toward his own horse, a calm animal with a soft, dark coat. He gently lifted Mary onto it, careful, slow, never rushing. Once she was seated, he reached up and adjusted the blanket around her and Eliza, making sure the baby was warm. Mary held her daughter close, leaning into the saddle, her body relaxing into a feeling she had almost forgotten. Security. The group began to move, riding at a pace slow enough that Mary didn't feel overwhelmed. The night air was chilly, but Mary felt warm under the shawls. She could hear the soft rhythm of hooves pressing into the earth. Each step carried her farther from the loneliness she had known and closer to something new. Something she didn't yet understand. She looked up at the night sky. The stars shimmered like tiny lanterns, guiding them across the open land. The moon glowed softly, lighting their path. Mary felt her eyelids grow heavy, but she fought the sleep. She didn't want to miss the feeling of being carried forward, of being protected. But the quiet movement soothed her like a lullaby. Eventually, exhaustion pulled her under, and she dozed lightly, waking only when the horse paused. She looked around and saw a soft glow ahead, a ring of gentle orange light from a distant fire. The riders were bringing her to their camp. As they approached, several more figures emerged. They carried warm blankets and baskets. There was no fear in their faces when they saw Mary, only curiosity and calm acceptance. They did not question why she was there or who she was. They simply made space for her. Charho helped her down from the horse. Mary's legs trembled, but he steadied her with a comforting hand. The women from earlier guided her toward a small tent-like shelter lined with soft furs. A woman inside offered her a warm drink made from herbs. Mary drank it slowly, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. Eliza woke and gave a small cry, not of distress but of hunger. A woman with gentle eyes brought a small bowl with softened grains. Mary fed her daughter carefully, grateful beyond words. Watching her baby eat peacefully brought tears to her eyes. One of the women placed a hand on Mary's shoulder in a quiet, supportive way. Mary didn't understand their language, but emotions didn't need translation. She felt safe, truly safe, for the first time since Thomas had passed. As the night continued, the soft hum of conversation drifted around her. Children laughed near a fire, men spoke in calm tones. Women moved about with steady purpose. The air smelled of herbs, warm earth, and fresh wood. Mary realized something important. No one stared at her with suspicion. No one avoided her. No one blamed her for anything. They accepted her presence as naturally as they accepted the night sky overhead. Charho approached before she drifted off to sleep. He knelt beside her and gently brushed a blanket over her legs. He looked at Eliza, who slept peacefully against Mary's chest. Then he spoke softly, in his language. She didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear from his warm gaze. He saw value in this child. He saw strength in Mary. He saw no burden, only life. Mary closed her eyes slowly, letting herself rest fully for the first time in days. Tomorrow was unknown, but for the first time, the unknown did not frighten her. She and Eliza were no longer alone. Morning came slowly to the camp, spreading soft golden light over the open land. When Mary woke, the first thing she felt was warmth. not just from the blankets, but from the gentle sun. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Her mind was still caught in the foggy space between dreaming and waking. Then she heard voices outside, peaceful and lively, and the sound reminded her that she was in a new place, safe with people who had helped her when she had nothing left. Eliza slept beside her, tiny hands curled near her face. Mary brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead and whispered a quiet thank you that her child was warm and fed. The memory of the cold riverbank felt like a distant nightmare now. She took a deep breath, letting the scent of morning air fill her. It smelled of earth, grass, and something cooking over a fire. One of the women who had helped her the night before gently stepped into the shelter. She carried a bowl of warm food and smiled kindly. Mary whispered, "Thank you," placing a hand on her chest to show gratitude. The woman nodded, understanding even without words. She motioned for Mary to eat slowly. Mary hadn't tasted warm food in days, and the simple meal felt like a blessing. Soon, the camp grew busier. Children ran around laughing, their steps light and carefree. Women prepared food or tended to baskets. Men checked their horses and spoke in calm voices. Mary watched quietly, noticing how smoothly everyone worked together. There was no harshness in their actions, no impatience. Everything moved like a river, steady and purposeful. After she finished eating, Mary wrapped Eliza in a clean cloth the women had given her and stepped outside. The sunlight felt gentle on her skin. She squinted at the brightness, still adjusting to this new world around her. Several children immediately noticed her and stared with wide, curious eyes. One little girl approached carefully, holding a small woven toy made from grass. She offered it to Mary with both hands. Mary smiled and accepted it, bowing her head a little to show her appreciation. The girl giggled softly and then ran back to join her friends. Mary felt her heart soften. Even though she was a stranger, the children didn't treat her with fear. Their openness reminded her of how life could be when people weren't ruled by judgment. A few steps away, Charho stood speaking with two elders. He noticed Mary and gave her a warm nod, inviting her to approach if she wished. Mary hesitated at first, unsure if she was interrupting something important, but his calm expression reassured her. She walked slowly toward him. Charho greeted her with a gentle gesture. The elders smiled softly, their eyes kind and wise. Charho spoke slowly, using simple words in his own language and pointing to things around them, trying to help her understand. He pointed to the camp, then to his people, then placed a hand over his heart. Mary understood he was telling her that she was welcome here, that they meant to take care of her. Mary pressed her hand to her chest the same way and whispered, "Thank you." She wasn't sure if they understood her words, but they understood the emotion behind them. One of the elders handed Eliza a tiny woven cloth with small patterns stitched into it, a gentle gift for the newborn. Mary's eyes filled with tears again, not from sadness this time, but from the simple kindness these people continued to show her. Throughout the day, the women taught her small tasks. They didn't overwhelm her. Instead, they guided her slowly, showing her how to grind grain or how to fold cloth in the way they did. Mary watched their hands carefully, memorizing their movements. She had always been a fast learner, especially when necessity forced her to be. At one point, she sat with a group of women who were sewing. They offered her a needle and thread, and though their patterns were different from what she knew, she tried her best. The women encouraged her gently, nodding with approval when she completed a small section. Mary felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. The afternoon brought a soft breeze, and Eliza slept peacefully in a small cradle-like basket the women had made for her. Mary sat beside her, watching as the wind played with the tall grass just beyond the camp. For the first time since Thomas had passed, She let her shoulders relax. She felt the weight of grief, but now it rested lighter, softened by the comfort of people who asked nothing from her in return. Later in the day, Tsarho approached, carrying a small wooden bowl. He offered it to Mary. Inside was a warm drink made from herbs. She took it gratefully and sipped. The flavor was gentle, calming. He sat a short distance away, giving her space, but offering quiet company. Mary felt safe around him, not afraid, not judged, just acknowledged. Tsarho looked at Eliza, sleeping peacefully. He touched his chest and then held his hand out toward the baby, saying a soft word in his language. Mary listened carefully. It sounded like something tender, something meaningful. He repeated it again, slower this time. Mary didn't understand the language, but she could tell it was a loving nickname of sorts. She pointed to her daughter and said softly, "Eliza." Tsarho nodded with a warm smile. Then he said the gentle word again. Mary sensed he was giving her child a second name, a name from his own people, a name of affection. She felt honored and humbled all at once. As the sun lowered in the sky, the camp prepared for evening. Fires were lit. Pots were placed over them, and the smell of warm food spread through the air. Mary helped the women carefully, following their gestures. No one rushed her. No one corrected her sharply. They guided her with encouragement, and in return, Mary offered her effort with sincerity. She realized something important as she worked alongside them. These people valued community in a way she had rarely experienced. Every person had a role, and no one was left behind. Children, elders, mothers, hunters, everyone mattered. It was a kind of harmony she had longed for without knowing it. Dinner in the camp was shared. People sat in a large circle offering food to one another. Mary sat among them, Eliza cradled in her arms. She ate slowly, grateful for every bite. A few children came to sit near her, fascinated by Eliza's tiny fingers and quiet breaths. Mary let them look, and they touched the baby gently, curious and kind. As the sky darkened, painted in shades of pink and gold, Mary thought about the settlement she had left behind. She thought about the cold stares, the whispered judgments, the emptiness of being pushed away. Here, there were no such looks. No one treated her like a burden. No one blamed her child for being born a girl. The thought filled her with deep relief. When the stars appeared, Tsarho stood and spoke to the group in a calm voice. People listened quietly, nodding. Mary couldn't understand the words, but she could feel the meaning in the tone. It sounded like guidance, reassurance, and unity. After he finished speaking, he walked toward Mary. He knelt beside her and touched the ground gently, then touched his chest. Then he pointed to her and Eliza. Mary watched him quietly, trying to understand. Her heart softened as the meaning slowly came to her. He was offering them protection, a place among his people. Mary felt her eyes fill with tears, but this time they were warm and full of gratitude. She placed her hand over her heart and bowed her head gently. She whispered, "Thank you. Thank you." Even if he did not know the words, he understood the feeling. That night, Mary lay in the shelter with Eliza beside her. Soft sounds filled the camp, the crackle of fire, the chatter of children drifting off to sleep, the murmur of people speaking quietly. She felt wrapped in peace. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. For the first time, she believed that she and her daughter might have a future, a real future. Not one shaped by rejection or loneliness, but one built by kindness, respect, and community. She drifted into sleep with a calm heart. Days turned into weeks, and the weeks slowly grew into months. Life in the camp settled into a gentle rhythm that Mary learned to follow. Every morning began with the soft light of dawn stretching across the open land, warming the air and waking the camp. Mary would rise with Eliza still in her arms, feeling grateful for another safe morning. She had lived through many days of struggle before coming here, and every new sunrise felt like a promise that she could keep going. The people of the camp treated her as one of their own. They taught her how to prepare food in their way, how to shape baskets from reeds, how to wash and dry herbs for medicine, and how to carry water from the nearby stream using the tools they had made. Mary learned slowly, but the women were patient with her. They moved with grace and purpose, and she admired the strength they carried so quietly. Eliza grew stronger each day. Her cheeks filled out, her eyes brightened, and she began to respond to the sounds around her. The children in the camp adored her. They often gathered around Mary, waiting for a chance to see the baby smile. When Eliza heard their laughter, she wiggled her hands excitedly, making the children laugh even more. Mary was thankful that her daughter was surrounded by so much warmth. Tsarho visited often, checking on them with gentle curiosity. He never intruded, never demanded anything, but always made sure Mary and Eliza had what they needed. Sometimes he brought small gifts, a soft cloth, a carved wooden toy, a handful of berries he thought Mary might enjoy. He seemed to understand that kindness could be quiet, not loud or overwhelming. Mary grew comfortable around him, trusting his calm presence. As time passed, Mary became familiar with the patterns of the camp. She knew when the men would leave to gather supplies, when the women prepared meals together, and when the elders sat in a circle telling stories that passed wisdom down through generations. Even though she did not understand every word they spoke, she understood the meaning behind their expressions, their gestures, and the way their voices rose and fell like the wind. Mary sometimes watched the elders from a distance, wishing she could fully understand their stories. She asked one of the women, Meha, to teach her more words from their language. Meha was patient and kind, repeating simple words each day until Mary could remember them easily. Mary learned how to greet people, how to say thank you, and how to ask if someone needed help. The people appreciated her effort, smiling warmly when she used the new words. One soft morning, Tsarho approached with a calm smile. He pointed to his horse and then to the horizon, inviting Mary to walk with him. She nodded, carefully placing Eliza in a small cradle the women had made for her. A young girl agreed to watch the baby while Mary stepped away for a short time. Mary trusted her, knowing the children here were taught to be gentle and responsible. As they walked slowly beside the horses, Tsarho spoke to her in simple sentences, using the words she had learned. He pointed out certain plants and told her their uses. He showed her small tracks in the dirt and taught her which animals they belonged to. Mary listened closely, appreciating the way he explained things with patience and clarity. His voice was steady, never rushed, making learning feel natural. They reached a small hill overlooking the camp. From there, Mary could see everything: the circle of tents, the smoke rising gently from cooking fires, the children playing near the tall grass, the women working near the stream, and the elders sitting under the shade of a large tree. It was a picture of peace, of life moving steadily in harmony. Tsarho pointed at the camp, then at Mary, then placed his hand over his heart. Mary understood. He was asking how she felt living among them. She looked at the camp again, then at Tsarho, and touched her own heart. "I feel safe," she whispered, hoping the emotion would speak for her even if the words didn't. Tsarho nodded warmly, understanding. When they returned, Mary found Eliza awake and smiling. The little girl reached her arms out, kicking her legs in excitement. Mary scooped her up and kissed her forehead. It amazed her how quickly her daughter was growing, how strong she had become since the days when she was cold and hungry by the river. Looking at her now, healthy and content, Mary felt gratitude she could not fully express. As months continued to pass, Mary discovered she had become part of the camp in a deeper way. She laughed with the women during their work, listened to the elders when they shared stories, and held small children when their mothers needed help. She felt woven into the daily life of the camp, like one thread among many, each important in its own way. One quiet afternoon, a group of riders approached from the distance. The camp noticed them arriving, and several people stood to watch. Mary felt a small flutter of worry. Unfamiliar faces always made her cautious. Charo stepped forward to meet the riders, and the camp waited in calm silence. Mary's breath caught when she realized the visitors were people from the settlement she had once lived in. She recognized their clothing and the way they carried themselves. A man she knew, Mr. Hale, stood at the front, looking around the camp with careful eyes. Mary clutched Eliza gently against her chest. Memories of being turned away returned, not in anger, but in sadness. After speaking with Charo for a few minutes, Mr. Hale spotted Mary. His eyes widened slightly, and he approached her. Mary stood still, her heart steady this time. She no longer felt like the frightened, lonely woman who had left the settlement months before. The camp had helped her grow stronger, inside and out. "Mary," Mr. Hale said quietly, "we didn't expect to find you here." Mary nodded politely, but she did not step closer. She simply held Eliza with gentle confidence. Mr. Hale glanced at the baby and then back at Mary. His expression softened. He seemed unsure, perhaps embarrassed, perhaps regretful. "We came to ask if you plan to return," he said, his voice hesitant. Before Mary could speak, Charo stepped beside her. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't show anger. He simply placed himself calmly between Mary and the man. He stood tall and steady, a silent message of protection and respect. Mr. Hale looked between them, understanding without needing an explanation. He nodded awkwardly, thanked Charo for allowing them to speak, and then returned to the other riders. The group left quietly, disappearing into the open land. Mary watched them go, feeling no bitterness, only peace. She had already chosen her life, her home, and her people. She looked at Charo, grateful for the way he stood by her without speaking a single harsh word. He nodded gently, as if to say she belonged here now. Time continued to pass, each day bringing new warmth and growth. Eliza reached her first steps during a bright afternoon when the children were playing nearby. Mary held her tiny hands as the little girl wobbled forward, taking a few slow but steady steps before falling into her mother's arms with a delighted giggle. The camp cheered softly, as if celebrating a small miracle. Charo lifted the child gently and held her high, calling her the affectionate nickname he had given her months before. Mary watched the scene with a full heart. Her daughter was loved. She was safe. She was surrounded by people who valued her simply because she existed. That evening, as the sun turned the sky gold and purple, Mary sat beside the fire with Eliza curled in her lap. The camp glowed softly in the fading light. Families gathered, children laughed, elders whispered stories, and the air carried a peaceful warmth. Mary closed her eyes for a moment, letting gratitude wash over her. She had come from a place where she was judged and pushed away. But here, she had found something far greater than acceptance. She had found a community that believed in kindness, in unity, in giving people a place to belong. She looked down at Eliza, who stared up at her with bright, trusting eyes. Mary kissed her forehead and whispered softly, "We are home." And for the first time in a long, long while, she truly believed it.